What a fantastic day of conversations. Now for our final conversation of this year's summit, The Originals Owning Your Power. Please welcome Tracee Ellis Ross, actress, founder, and CEO, Pattern Beauty, and Glennon Doyle, author Untamed, and founder and president, Together Rising.
Tracee. Hi, Tracee.
Hi, Glennon. Oh, do I wish I was with you in person, sitting on my blue couch in my blue room with some tea like we were last time.
I miss your blue couch. If there's anybody who I could be sitting with right now, it would be you. I am so, even if we have to do it this way, I'm so honored to be spending time with you today.
This is a treat.
For two reasons. Truly, since I met you, I just knew that it collected you. I just knew that you were a soulmate forever.
Yep.
And I share that with the whole world. Feels that way. Thank you.
I think it's the same with you though, Glennon.
Oh, thank you.
I feel like, can I just say, I feel like souls are made in bunches, and God and Mother Nature, they stir up these beautiful, like, cauldrons of sea and trees and all this stuff, this beautiful soup, and then they kind of toss out these souls that go through time, and every once in a while you get the benefit of meeting one of your cauldron sisters or brothers. And I feel like you and I are cauldron sisters. Like we were made in the same soup. And I'm so happy we get to share this lifetime together, and even if we don't get to see each other a lot, I'm so grateful that me and the world get to feel your heart and hear your beautiful experiential wisdom and your courage and all of the things that you share with all of us that allow us to have a more full lives in our own skin. And I'm just so grateful that you exist. And Untamed, mwah, mwah.
Oh, Tracee, thank you for that. So beautiful. And I want to get into all of the questions about your work, because I don't think that there's anybody who's been more effective and beloved in the art space, in the business space, in the using our platforms for change space than you. I can't imagine anybody. But before we do that, we had a moment on text this morning where we were being real.
Yeah.
Can we just
take a breath?
Yeah. Like how we have to do these things. We have to, show up still, but how are you doing with this COVID world, with being so overwhelmed and underwhelmed, and we just all want some whelmed, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Just like, how can we get to that like nice middle plane? As we were setting up our tech for this too, it's like good enough. It can be good enough. And I feel like pre-pandemic, there was a lot of like, how do you do more? How do you do it faster, harder, better, whatever, and I'm okay. I think considering all that's happening, I'm great. I'm not always my favorite version of myself in this, and I don't seem to have access to some of my favorite things in life. Hugs, tender, giggly moments in the presence of my family that happen unexpectedly, and even the ones that happen from planning. Time with my girlfriends, my sisterhood of girlfriends. It makes me cry just thinking about it. But like, I forget, like most of my closest girlfriends, I have like 3 really close girlfriends in LA. And then my real tribe from years and years is in New York. And I don't think I realized how often I was traveling to New York once a month, And so I haven't seen them. And, all the things that all of us use, to use one of your terms that you helped me through a tough moment. I think it was last year or the year before, but that tether me to my humanity. And so I feel like it's a conscious effort, which it always is, but more so to really cultivate those things that anchor me to myself, to joy, and to connection and collective energy, because I like that energy a lot. And it's funny because I feel like I play an extrovert in life, but I'm really an introvert. And so, you've got lots of people around you. You've got your kids, you got Abby.
I do. That's
it's
why
its
I
own
have
set.
crazy eyes right now. Because
You've got your own set. So how are you, Glennon?
I'm good. I'm good. I think that this is a tricky time in terms of, I've always thought of us as like snow globes, and that we just keep ourselves kind of distracted because we don't want to see like the truthy truth at the center of things. And this is like a forced settling of the snow globe. And I think one of the reasons we're so anxious is because the truth of things is just in our face right now,
No
like
distractions.
no distractions, ourselves, our relationships. I mean, we used to be able to distract ourselves from that stuff. And now that stuff is sitting next to us on the couch for 6 months straight. Like
just breathing. Breathing.
Chewing ice every once in a while, Tracee. Chewing ice. Okay. So while it reminds me of early sobriety, actually, just sitting with all your stuff every day. So while it's tricky, I also think that there's going to be growth that comes from it, because we don't ever grow unless we look at our stuff. Right?
Yeah, I feel like honestly for me, this has been an extremely profound year. Some real deepening has happened. Some real softening has happened. I feel profoundly aware of how I am bound up with my fellow humans, how we are all so interconnected in such a really deep and spiritual way, and very aware of the suffering and the reality of, the economy and unemployment and COVID, all of these things, which makes me very connected to my service arm, the part of me that really believes in service and putting things in perspective and living life on life's terms, and being in the reality of my day and of my life where my feet are.
Every time I talk to you, no one talks. You're such a freaking original, Tracee Ellis Ross. And you just like,
but I'm telling you, we're from the same pot, the same cauldron. Do you know that I have friends that called me when they read your book and they were like, she's like your people, right? And I was like, oh no, we're friends. like people literally were like, but she talks a very similar language as you. I'm like, yeah.
What a compliment to me. Well, okay, so you are an original and you're being a fully human woman out loud. Like, wow, that's a doozy to do. How, with this way that we are constantly starting so early in life, that we're constantly encouraged to fit a mold, right? Or to conform. How do you stay like this? Like, how do you keep your individuality and make brave decisions and stay true to yourself and all of that? How do you stay Tracee?
Okay, so I'm going to ask you the same question, but I'm going to try and answer for me. Let's see. Well, I think I don't do it alone. I do it with a very strong spiritual practice, which includes everything from choosing food that is good for me, to taking baths, to zoning out to television, to really looking at the things that actually match my insides, takes a lot of courage and a lot of tears. And it has been a one day at a time, sometimes 1 hour at a time adventure. The truth is that my live out loudness has been hard earned. Like, I was so uncomfortable in my skin growing up. And then I figured out what I wanted, that like how to make my skin match my insides. And then I figured out who I was and like started to accept that, but didn't really like it. And then, so there was that part of the journey. And then there was like, how do I meet myself? And then can I just accept myself? I don't have to like it. Can I just accept it? Because like I've tried to be all the different things. Like I've tried to be all the things. And the truth is I am best at being me. I'm just best at it. And it's much more comfortable, and it's much more comfortable for everybody around me when I'm myself. You know what it's like when you're around somebody who you can tell is not being themselves and doing that thing, like how it makes you feel like you should be doing something else and you should be, so, and then finally, it was like then came the journey of like, how do I find the courage to actually be the person that I know that I am? And then even maybe on some days like her. And even if I don't like her, and even if there's a favorite version of me and my not favorite version of me and all these different kinds, how do I be kind to her no matter what? And that is the part that I have, that's a daily reprieve. That's like that requires a consciousness. It requires a community and a tribe of friends and women around me that I'm not afraid to show who I am to, my vulnerable bits. You know, like I texted you this morning. Like I feel like the last week and a half, life has been just screaming, like screaming everywhere. And I'm not joking you, Glennon. I've been so proud of myself. I had like a lot of big things to do. It's just been like waves crashing, like not crashing, but like just so many things coming at me that are like require me to be like the big adult Tracee. And all I want to do is be like little girl Tracee and like eat a popsicle and like call it a day. Like, bye, I'm gonna eat a popsicle and go to bed. But I've got to keep showing up, and I love showing up. The more energy, the more energy I have, the more energy I have. Anyway, but I have been talking to myself so gently and just saying, you're doing a good job, Tracee. Like you are. And I know it's hard right now. And it takes all those things. It just takes all those things to live out loud. It's not an Instagram post. It's a real life situation. And I learn from people like you and so many others that show me that I'm not alone in my humanity. Like I'm not alone in feeling kooky and crazy or just terrified or anxious or whatever, and doing it anyway, and continuing to show up. So that would be my
amen to all of that. Retweet all of those things she just said.
RT. What about you, Glennon?
Well, I learned through my early sobriety that I have one thing which makes all decisions a lot easier in my professional and personal life. And my one thing is sobriety, which means that my one thing is no shame. That's the only thing that will ever take me out is shame. It's not that life is hard. It's the shame about life being hard that takes me out. So, so whenever I have something that feels secretive or feels shameful, that's my sign that I have to get it out one way or another.
Yep.
And so that leads to a life of integrity, which doesn't mean to me doing the right thing. It just means my outer words and actions are integrated with my inner self, like you just said, oneself, right? So, yeah, the one thing isn't people liking me, and the one thing isn't like doing the next successful thing, or the one thing. So it just makes everything else easier.
Yeah.
It makes decisions easier.
And I just was thinking as you were talking, it's this sense of wholeness, which, a lot of people use the word well-being, and it's hard for me because I'm like, because then it means you're doing well. And I don't always feel like I'm doing well.
Medium being. We're medium being.
I'm like, I'm okay. Like I remember, their recovery talk of, not the highs, not the lows, like when life starts to get like this. And I was like, why would you want that? And I'm like, cause, and I have a friend who always used to say, her husband was a surgeon. And she said, you can kill someone from trying to make them better. When it's good enough, it's good enough.
Yes. And about ourselves too. I mean, when you said, like, we don't actually, living with integrity, being yourself doesn't always mean being better. It doesn't always mean being great. I'm not even my favorite type of person, Tracee. Like, I'm not. I'm not even close. Like, I am anxious. I am sweaty. I am suspicious. All of those things make me awesome at certain things in my life, but they're not my favorite trait. Abby is my favorite type of person. She's chill. She's
fantastic,
right? But me in full integrity, it's not perfect like that, right? But I'm showing up as myself.
Yeah, it's so funny. I remember calling a friend when I was just like, so-and-so doesn't like it, like whatever, and she was like, you might not be everyone's cup of tea. And I was stopped dead in my tracks. And I was like, what? That's the whole point of living. I need to be everybody. Do I? I was like, do I need to be everybody's cup? I don't need to be everybody's cup of tea. I need to be my cup of tea. And then I was like, well, I don't know. So I literally made a list, Glennon, and I still have it, of all the things I liked about myself. And I realized that so many of the things that I like about myself are actually things that people might not like.
Right. That might not make you likable to everybody. Right. Tracee, one time my kid was having this problem at school. And I didn't know about the problem, and it was going on forever because, I'm not like there at all the freaking meetings and mother and teas or whatever. So I didn't know. So I was already having guilt. So I called this mother there and I said, she said, this has been going on forever. And I said, why didn't you tell me? And she said, well, because sometimes I find you to be unapproachable.
Yes.
Tracee, I was devastated. I actually cried till I called my friend Liz Gilbert and I said, they're calling me unapproachable. And she said, do you want to be approached? And I said, actually, no. And she said,
that's the thing.
Well done.
So confused. It gets so confused. But Glennon, this is a thing really, particularly for women. We've been raised in a patriarchal structure that we are so busy seeing ourselves from the outside, not even through like a loving friend's gaze, but through like a judgmental man's gaze that is like so confusing. And, I try and do these exercises all the time. How can I like show up and say, this is me instead of look at me? Like, how can I actually, we say like be where your feet are, but like, how can you actually get in your feet? And that's actually a question I had for you, because I'm so curious to hear your answer on this. But like in Untamed, you talk about dropping in, right? So how do you get into your body and drop down? Like, is there a thing? Because I feel like the more I hear examples of other people's things, like it might be that I borrow yours, or it might be that it triggers a new way for me to get in my body. Because in those moments when you get scared and you just like, you run out, like, I swear to God, I get this image of me like going, and like running out of my body and being like, no, thank you. I'm not gonna be in there. That's a scary place to be. Bye. Like, and then all's lost. If I'm not in my body and connected to my body, like all is lost.
No, because then all we have left is this, and nobody wants to be here.
Dangerous neighborhood, Glennon.
Safe territory.
Bad place to go alone.
I mean, and I've learned that early. I think as someone who's had to deal with mental differences my whole life, so I've had to deal, depression and anxiety on a regular basis. I learned early, like we need another place to check in than up here all the time. Right. Yeah. Also, as a deep thinker and a critic of culture, I also know that this is where all my indoctrination lives.
Yeah.
Right. This is where every bias that I've ever been conditioned to have, this is where everything that people have told me I can and can't do live. This is where, my training about who's good and who's bad and who's right and who's wrong, and none of it's pure, right? It's all culturally constructed.
It's tapes that have been installed before you even knew you were thinking them.
Right. So it's like, how do we get to the pure, right? How do we get like out of our indoctrination and into our imagination? That's what I think about all the time. And so I think I can tell you all of my anxiety is in words. If I'm hearing, wait, Tracee, I could be talking to you, knowing what I'm going to do next, knowing what the next right thing is. And I could argue with you the other way because I don't want to do the hard thing for 45 minutes. I could tell you all the reasons. So whenever
you're not the only one, Glennon.
All the words, but then the knowing, right? It's like, I don't know, it's a gravity. It's like it's not in words, it's a gravity. It's just like a settling. It feels directional sometimes. It's always calm. It lives beneath the anxiety. It's low, right? It's always there, and it's underneath. It's underneath all of the layers. I don't know. And it's the storyteller. I always think that, like, the mind is an excuse maker and the imagination is a storyteller. Every time I ask a woman, what's the truest, most beautiful life you can imagine, relationship you can imagine, community, job, there's like an opening, right?
Yeah, it does. It opens, and it's so, I'm glad you used the word imagination. It's one of the things I heard Patrisse Cullors say about reimagining. And I was like, oh, like we're in a space right now as a culture, as a society, as a country, where we have to reimagine because it doesn't exist. Like I keep thinking, if we're dismantling all these things, you can't use the same mind. It's like you can't use the messed up mind to fix the thing. Like we've got all those structures in us, and we've been listening to that indoctrination of the structure that is not working. So we have to use our imagination in these moments to start to dream of something new. And I like to imagine like my body gets to anchor that imagination, right? Like the tree trunks and then the roots, you know, and really letting my body settle in. I like to wander, ponder, and be, which I find Instagram and so much of what our culture offers that's so fun, just zoning out to TV, like doesn't allow, because it just takes you somewhere else instead of letting you like get found by something, you know? And I wonder, in all that we're in right now, how do you have these difficult conversations show up? You know, it's so funny because we always say, like, this is a time for difficult conversations, but no one ever really tells you what they're gonna be. And you think you're all prepared and you think you're doing good. And then you turn around and you're like, oh God, was this it?
Yeah, that was it. I blew it.
This one is scary. And I didn't want to do this one. I was ready for this one. I had sharpened my knives and I had my fork and my napkin. What is this? Like, this is not the one I wanted to have.
That's so it.
Right?
That is so it. And then on the way home, you think of all the things you could have said. Yeah.
Yeah, like how do you hold and make space, particularly because, you know, I don't know about you, but it feels like for me, we have this similar thing where, and if it's not, I hate when people do that. And then in your head, you're like, no, we're not alike in that way. But, but I feel like the truth of who I am personally is the truth of who I am professionally. Like that, I bring that same person, my same intentions, my same person, the same whole self goes into all of these aspects. And it's not that I don't have boundaries between my private and my, you know, what's sacred and all that, but there's all these things. So how do you create that safe space for yourself so that in your professional and public self and private self, you are, I hear little people. Excuse me, little dogs.
My baby.
For me. Little babies. So how do you choose where you send your energy and your heart? And how do you show up for these tangled and sticky and sharp conversations that go along with taking those kinds of risks?
Ooh. Well, I think, you know, one of the things we have in common is that we live and lead and love like women. So we do bring our intuition everywhere we go, and we do bring our whole selves, meaning our imagination, our intuition. And so for me, the other part of that self that I bring is emotion. And I think that we have been, as women, shamed out of any sort of passionate feeling, right? You know, any sort of anger or heartbreak or any of it makes us somehow less leader-like and men more leader-like. So I think we can reject that going into the after. And so I just think about things that make me angry or break my heart. And those are the things I show up for, right?
Yeah, that's good.
As opposed to thinking I shouldn't be. When I feel angry, I assume that there's something wrong, not that there's something wrong with me, right? Because I spent the first 40 years of my life, 30 years, thinking there was something wrong with me. Right? I used to just go to therapy. Now I go to the polling place or the streets or the whatever, right? Like, or what breaks my heart has been such a good guide for me, I mean, I think that if you ask, women are always asking me, how do I find my purpose? How do I find my people? And if you ask yourself, what breaks my heart, and go to the places where that world healing work is being done, you find both.
That's true.
Right? Because there's no bond greater than the one that happens among women who are doing the same world healing work together.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, those are the places where I think you let your feet take you to those places. And then there's often very difficult, like almost always very difficult conversations being had there. And then I think that one of the best things that women can do is just abandon this idea that we have to abandon ourselves in order to not rock the boat. We can say the hard thing, even if it's not perfect, even if it causes trauma and drama afterwards, right? Because the price we pay for not saying it is that we slowly die inside.
We slowly die inside. And I will say, you know, saying the thing, like, I asked a friend of mine to help. I was like, this is a great question. I'm just going to ask you this. What's the advice you would give for those of us, for those people who are beginning to remember that they are cheetahs, but can't leave the zoo yet? And I think I always want to remind everyone, it's challenging and wonderful for all of us. Find your people, find your tribe, find your gaggle, find your collective space of other people who are steps ahead of you and steps behind you, that you can share your experience, strength, and hope with on either side, that you can receive from, that you can share your heart, your vulnerability, and your insecurities, like all of those things, so that you're not alone in the experience. Because having those difficult conversations in a vacuum by yourself, no. I wouldn't suggest it. Like, no, you know, but learning that it is okay to be vulnerable with people and to find the right people to be vulnerable with. Because you might do it and go, well, that did not work.
That's right.
That is not a person to call when I feel whatever. And not one person has to be your all things. But so what would you say to people that are either just learning how to have their voice, how to honor their inner voice, and they're not quite ready to move out of the cage and into the freedom of a liberated experience for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, because Untamed is about conditioning, and the framework of it is me leaving my broken marriage and falling madly in love with a woman. I think that people often are like, so, I mean, my advice to everyone is not to leave their husbands and marry a female Olympian. Actually, a little bit is. That's a little bit is my advice.
That would mean I would have to get married first and whatever.
I know, whatever.
I like the thread that's in there. Leave the cage and go to the free space, the space where it feels, yeah. Got it.
What I would tell you, Tracee, is that most of my friends, all of them want a different relationship, but most of them want it with the same person.
Oh,
right? Like it's just this idea of getting out of the cage is not necessarily about changing jobs, changing relationship, changing state, changing religion, changing whatever. It's just about saying the thing on the inside and trusting somebody with it, right? So when people say, oh, how do I have the hard conversations about like these big national issues? I'm like, have you talked to your partner about like let's start small, right? Let's start in the intimate circles. It's just this idea of, I have a need. Can I say it? Is it too much? Am I going to be rejected? Am I going to be abandoned? It's that practice, right, of speaking on the outside what we're thinking on the inside. And that is the slow untaming that then ripples out and out and out and out. But sometimes start with the hardest is the closest in intimate relationships we have, right?
True.
Yeah. Well, Tracee, you are my favorite human, besides Abby, and she's outside, so I need to say that. I have loved every minute of this. I love you so much. Thank you for everything that you are doing for the world, on your shows, in your production life, in Pattern. Your businesses are all over the place, and also just for being such a trusted light for progress in the world. I don't know how you choose what you're going to say and when you're going to say it, but it's always right on, and it comforts and challenges so many of us. And I just adore you, and I just want you to keep being Tracee forever.
I feel the same way about you. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that you're in the world. I can't wait till I get to sip tea with you and Abby. But in the meantime, we'll just have to stick with the Zoom scenarios. And I'm so grateful to Forbes for bringing us together in this way. What a treat in the middle of a day.
Absolutely. Thank you, Forbes. Thank you, Tracee. Take care of yourself. All the tethering things.
You too, Glennon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Glennon, Tracee, thank you so much for that conversation. You shared such amazing insights. But before you go, I wanted to ask each of you, in a year like 2020, how do you define power and what does it mean to you?
I'm just going to dive in.
Go for it, Tracee.
So I think I would define power as inner voice. And I would define power as something that is shared with others. It's not something to own. It's something to have in a collective space. And I always think of the power of family, the power of connection, the power of linked arms. I think of, walking across that bridge with all those arms linked, and the power of that conviction when you listen to that inner voice, even though everything around might be telling you something different. But I think we need to do a lot of redefining of power, because I think it is so inextricably linked to patriarchy right now. And the idea of matrilineal power and collective power is something that we all need to get way more familiar with.
Damn, girl. All right, here we go. Mine's going to be shorter.
Perfect.
To me, in this moment in 2020, the power that I am seeking and that I'm appreciating in other people is the power of the trust and love that is given to us by other people and how we choose to spend it.
Thanks so much, Tracee and Glennon. Tracee, I love how you define power as your inner voice, and not that it's something to own, but something that we have to share with others. And especially in a year like 2020, the power of that connection, as you said, to link arms has become all the more important. Melinda Gates, who opened the summit earlier today, said that amid a time of unprecedented challenge that we're living in right now, we stand at such a pivotal inflection point, but that there's no reason to believe that this moment in time to change the world will last forever, or that this window is going to stay open as long as we need it to. If we're going to act, we're going to have to act now. And as we've heard throughout today, what I'm so inspired by is the fact that women are uniquely positioned to seize the possibility that this moment presents to rebuild stronger and more equitably. So is this the end of the world as we know it? Or more importantly, and this question kept coming up in my mind throughout the day, could this crisis mark not just a new beginning, but a better beginning? And I really believe that answering those questions is up to each of us, and that after today, I'm all the more confident in the possibility of our power and the opportunity each of us holds to move the world forward. With that, I want to thank our partners who helped make today possible and share their voices: Citi, Audi of America, EY, Northwestern Mutual, and STARS. I want to thank the amazing team at Forbes. Most importantly, I want to thank all of you. I know that we have so many demands on our time, and that we have no shortage of opportunities to be looking at our screens, but I really hope that today created this moment of connection to spark new ideas, to think differently. And if there's one thing I ask this of every summit every year, but all the more so this year, if you have heard something that inspired you or that you think would benefit someone else, please share it. It's such an opportunity to pay that power forward. And in a year like this, I think that inspiration and that connection is all the more important. So thank you again. Stay safe and stay healthy, and hope hopefully the best is yet to come.